This hour,
it's an honor to have the president of Ukraine with us. We've had a lot of good discussions, a lot of good talks, and I think progress is being made, very substantial progress in many ways.
If I can, first of all, thank you
Please.
for invitation and thank you very much for your efforts, personal efforts to stop killings and stop this war.
President Zelensky seemed to be visibly holding his tongue, sitting in his new suit next to President Trump in the Oval Office yesterday. After the disaster of the last time the two met there, Zelensky kept his counsel, but I thought you could practically see his knuckles whitening when he was forcing himself not to respond to Trump's praising of Putin and his affirmation that the US is done spending money on Ukraine. Even barbs about his clothing and the lack of elections were taken on the chin this time by Zelensky. Here's the moment that the same reporter who questioned Volodymyr Zelensky about his lack of suit last time was called on by Trump.
President Zelensky, you look fabulous in that suit.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, you look good.
I said the same thing.
Yeah.
Isn't that nice? That's the one that attacked you last time. See, now he's in.
I remember that.
I love that. You look wonderful. No, my first question for you,
But
President
you
Zelensky.
are in the same suit. You see, I changed, you are not.
There's a lot of anger there. The substance of the extraordinary wartime crisis summit seems to be that a meeting between Putin and Zelensky looks more likely. Trump saying peace could happen in the next 7 to 14 days, but that Ukraine would have to buy weapons from the United States. The Financial Times reports a $100 billion deal funded by Europe would see Ukraine buy US-made weapons. The Kremlin says it would reject any NATO forces in Ukraine, but the US hasn't ruled out providing troops there. Trump called Putin yesterday afternoon. Zelensky says he's ready for a trilateral meeting, possibly in the next week or two. It's still very much all up in the air, but does President Trump deserve some credit for getting it to this stage? Sir Ben Wallace is the former Defence Secretary between 2019 and 2023, has written extensively about this issue, indeed a piece in the Telegraph today. Thank you very much indeed for coming on the programme, Sir Ben. Your thoughts on what you saw, heard from yesterday's meeting?
Well, the plus side is it didn't descend into the sort of Rottweiler bully scene that we saw in the Oval Office last time. And Zelensky was given his place, as he should do, as a president fighting to defend his country from a brutal regime. I think also it showed Trump had to, in a sense, give way. He had to entertain the European leaders. Originally, in Trump's mind, this was all about him. Well, it usually is all about him in his mind, and that, he was going to be the great deal maker. And I remember ages ago writing a piece saying that unless the people who've got skin in the game are actually in the room, if you remember that rather odd Saudi summit where the Russians turned up, sat in a room for hours with the Americans, then you won't make any progress. And so at the very least, the people who've got skin in the game, Europe, because it's our security as well as Ukraine's, Ukraine who are fighting and dying, and it was, joined currently the most powerful man in the world. So there's a plus there. There was no negatives. Trump was very careful not to rule things in and not to rule things out, which was uncharacteristic of him. But I also think that, we've got to a stage there potentially there might be a summit between Putin and President Zelensky. We'll see. Nothing else has been firm, and there's quite a lot of speculation in the media about troops on the ground, etc. The one thing that's constant in all of this, Tom, is that Russia rarely changes its tune. To be fair, for a regime that spends most of its time lying and deliberately spreading propaganda, when it comes to its geopolitical positions, it doesn't change. It's been very clear it won't tolerate NATO troops or European troops on the ground, even though it's not its country, but it just determined to not do that. He's been very clear, Putin, throughout, that he wouldn't have a ceasefire. He hasn't got one. And throughout, Putin continues to lay claims to the wider oblasts of Donetsk, etc., and refuses to give. And none of us have seen any indication of any give at all. Yeah. What we've also seen is that Putin seems to be more on the side of Russia than the West and our democratic values and Zelensky, which does worry me if the...
Do you mean Trump? Sorry, Ben. Do you mean...
Donald Trump.
Yeah, sorry.
Donald Trump. Donald Trump, if you notice, he takes the Russian lines. He tries to view Putin almost as greater than an equal of Zelensky. And you can see in all that, I mean, one of those ridiculous Rottweilers in the Oval Office asked Zelensky, when will you stop sending Ukrainian men to their deaths? Well, that's very easy to answer. That's when Putin stops illegally invading. And when your country is invaded, you don't send people to war. They, funnily enough, do their duty, join up and defend their nation.
Well, one of the things you seem to worry about, certainly in the pages of the Telegraph this morning, is that we are on, your quote you here, on the cusp of another 1938 Munich conference. That Trump plays a kind of, Chamberlain role in waving around a bit of paper saying, I've secured peace in our time, the reality being Putin ignores it.
Yeah, I mean, if Trump, and he's talked about land swaps previous to this summit, if Donald Trump concedes Putin's demand to not move the front line or give Putin the most important part of Donetsk from a strategic military point of view, that's the sort of big belt, the forest belt up in the northwest of the country, then what he does is he allows Putin to consolidate, go away, rearm, and he has a perfect strategic springboard and geographic position to further invade when he wants to. It also fixes troops, Western troops, if they are potentially deployed from Europe, in one part of Ukraine to police a Putin ceasefire rather than a Ukrainian one, while he goes off and rearms. And then it sets up what we call a strategic dilemma, is that at the moment, none of our forces are big enough to be able to have alternatives elsewhere. So you have thousands of troops fixed in Ukraine, and Donald Trump starts eating away at Estonia or Finland, and then we're in a difficult place.
I know it's a very difficult question to answer quickly. What would you want to see to have done differently?
I think I would like to have seen, first of all, a very clear statement from the United States that security guarantees will include US forces or troops alongside Europeans. I would have liked to have seen Europeans be much more specific about their investment in defence. Seems to be the only investment, seems to be European money into American defence from the Washington briefings. Yep. Actually, what we need to do is put our money where our mouth is and continue to stand firm and united with Putin. That, to be fair, European leaders were very clear, not with Putin, sorry, Zelensky. European leaders were very fair in making sure that their language matched President Zelensky's. The problem was there's still doubt because President Trump's language seems to be matching that of President Putin's. And that is a worry because a non-united front is the very thing that Putin wants, a sort of division, and that emboldens him.
Very good to have you on. Thank you for your time. Sir Ben Wallace is the former Defence Secretary. Listening to that at 7:13, Matthew Bartlett, Republican strategist and former Trump appointee to the State Department in the first term. Thank you for coming on the programme, Mr Bartlett. Your view of yesterday and whether you think your former boss deserves credit, even if we haven't got anything concrete out of it necessarily.
Yeah. Hey, good morning, Tom.
Morning.
I could opine about the credit that Donald Trump should get. That is absolutely not the point. This is not about Trump. This is about potentially ending a war and a peace deal. And just candidly speaking, directionally, this is headed in a far better direction than it has in years. President Trump, had the meeting with President Putin. Consulted with the Europeans prior to that. There are reports that even pushed back against Putin on the Donetsk, whereas Putin wanted all of it. He said, then maybe we should end this meeting. Putin supposedly relented. Had a tremendous day here in Washington. It is shocking to hear Sir Ben, but I'm not going to comment on that. I think
why is it shocking?
Preposterous to hear him say that Trump parroted Putin's lines. Really don't want to get into partisan nonsense or whatever. Let's just focus on what did happen, which was the seeds of a security agreement, a shocking, again, probably never before seen, non-NATO talk of French troops, British troops, Trump not even ruling out U.S. troops, a security agreement in there. The notion of Zelensky potentially being open to again, the very painful concessions that may be needed. More importantly, saying very bravely that he is ready to meet Vladimir Putin. It seems as if, again, there's a united front of those that are eager to make peace, a very, very difficult process, yet it is far preferable to just the horrific status quo right now. So again,
in the same way
in Washington, and we'll see what happens next.
But as Sir Ben was trying to make the argument for, in the same way that a peace agreement was good in 1938. With some land handed over to Nazi Germany and Hitler saying he wasn't going to invade any further. In 1938, that was good, but obviously it precipitated something that was absolutely catastrophic. Do you reject that comparison?
A very naive and potentially dangerous comparison. I mean, let's just be clear here. If Vladimir Putin was Hitler, viewed as such, we would all have our armies in Ukraine. We'd be rolling tanks into Moscow. This would be a massive escalatory war that I don't think is in anybody's interest. So again, feel free to take an offensive posture. Feel free to. It's just again, the realities of this are brutal, are painful, and the notion of this is Hitler is just, and this is World War II, and we're going to have some sort of military conquer win is just fantasy. It's just not the case right now. This is going to be a war that is going to be end diplomatically. And again, peace is sometimes just as hard to do as war is. But let's just be clear-eyed about this. Let's also remember that the Europeans last year bought a record level of LNG gas from, Putin, from Hitler, if you will. So again, this is complex, inflammatory rhetoric potentially makes it worse all around. I would agree to that. Putin is evil. Putin is a murderous, invading dictator who has taken land at the barrel of a gun. Yet we are forced, the world, if you will, are forced to find a way to end this, make safeguards to ensure this doesn't happen. And again, I think directionally speaking,
it's
this
in a
was
better
a good
place.
day.
Yeah. Matthew, thank you. Matthew Bartlett is a Republican strategist and former Trump appointee to the State Department in his first term. I wonder whether you think, is that not unquestionably the case? It is much better, isn't it, to be talking about maybe a peace deal in 7 to 14 days and Zelensky meeting Putin and a security arrangement, even though if we're paying for it, and we are apparently, according to the Financial Times, $100 billion to buy US-made weapons to help Ukraine defend itself should the worst come to the worst, plus maybe some boots on the ground in Ukraine. That's to be worked out. Is this not in a better place than it was 2 years ago, a year ago, 6 months ago, pre-Trump? This is now in a better place to maybe make peace, or you worry about the nature of the peace that is being made with a much more sympathetic to Putin president in the Oval Office.